Welcome to the show, Crystal.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. What is your sober date?
My sober date was Halloween 3 years ago.
Yo, congrats on 3 years.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's amazing. Okay, so what was going on October 30th, 3 years ago?
Um, I just got tired of repeating the same cycle because I've been drinking since I was 18. I got out of high school, I joined the military, went off and started going out and enjoying the social life and just started drinking and it never stopped. I went through times where I said, well, I don't want to do it no more. I might stop drinking for maybe 2 or 3 months at the most. And then the cycle repeat all over again.
All right, so where are you from?
I am originally from Oklahoma. Um, Sometimes it depends on the question as far as where I'm from because my husband was military, I was military. So we kind of move around all over the place.
All right, well, let's get into your background a little bit. Did you have any brothers or sisters growing up?
I do have a sister. Um, the the background is we'll go back to where my parents started. So my mom and dad, they were fresh out of high school. They knew each other. They got married. He ended up going to the military. My dad did. He went to Vietnam. When he was in Vietnam, he ended up having an injury where he fell and broke his back. So they sent him back home. Well, he ended up going into the VA hospital, and I was about 3 years old at that time. And my mom took me to live with my aunt. So I lived with my aunt from the time I was about 3 to 6 years old. And I was doing good. I was around three older boys. So I was trying to do everything that they did. They go out and play football. I want to play football. If I would used to take their bicycle, jump ramps, all that fun stuff. So I was pretty much follow them around, little tomboy type a girl. Um, I went to school one day, and I remember this. I went to school, and my mom just showed up like out of nowhere, and she came to school, picked me up, and left. That was it. So I went to stay with my mom with her at her mom's house. She had a younger brother who was about 18 years old at that time. The younger brother was into child pornography, so he took pictures of a lot of underage kids, including myself, my sister, my cousins. And it was kind of like a family hush hush secret. Everybody knew about it, but nobody really wanted to do anything. It's one of those type of things.
So that was your uncle?
Yes.
And
Which,
how old were you? 6?
like six.
That's there's no really words for that except for, it's gross and it's highly illegal. Um, so how old was your sister at the time when he was doing that?
She was a year younger. She was 5. And then my cousin, she was older. She was probably about 9 or 10. And my cousin, she went on and ended up having a really bad drug addiction. She ended up getting sober, clean. My sister ended up um, being a drug addict. She still is. So
So that's pretty traumatic. How long did that go on for, Crystal?
about about a year, where my mom got up and she decided to move out on her own. So she ended up, we kind of moved into the little projects. So I think that's what she was waiting for, is to get approval. So we lived there, and she met this guy that she ended up marrying. So we ended up moving again. So I've already been through my aunt, went back with my grandmother, back with this guy, and we kind of move around from house to house. They really didn't keep a job, and he would do odds and ends jobs to make money. Well, he ended up getting in trouble because he was also an alcoholic, and he went to jail. So when he went to jail, my mom wrote a lot of hot checks. So she was getting ready to go to jail. So she took me to my dad's house, and I started living with my dad, which was about I was in sixth grade, so I was about 11 years old. So I lived with my dad from there. He was considered 100% disabled at this time. So he was getting a disability check, and he ended up meeting this woman, and they got married. And her background was that she was married at 13 to an alcoholic who used to beat her. So she came from that type of background, but she got clean and sober by the time she met my dad and they got married.
So
Um,
let me see here. Your parents divorced. How old were they when they divorced?
I was 3. That's when I went to live with my aunt.
Okay, and both your parents were in the military?
No, just him. So when he
Just him.
was in a hospital, they ended up separating.
Okay. And you live with your aunt for 3 years, and then you move in with your mom's mom?
Yes.
Okay. And that's when your uncle was like taking pictures. Did your uncle ever get caught?
I think he has been caught. So it was always something that the family knew about, but they really didn't address it. I think back at that time, nobody really understood how to. So it was just like a family secret type of thing.
When did that start with him? Was he like a teenager?
Well, he was 18 when I lived there. So probably before then.
And he would, not to pry too much, I'm just trying to see the trauma in it. He would have you undress and take pictures then.
Yes. And his mom went in the room and found some of the pictures.
And they kind of swept it under the rug.
Yes. Well, when I got older, I found out that he was doing the same thing to other family member or other people outside of the family. He ended up getting arrested and went to jail.
Good. That's a relief because that's a despicable behavior to do as anybody, whether how old they are. Um, I'm glad he ended up going to jail for it. So you are at your grandmom's from 6 until you were 12.
Um, 6 to probably about 8, and that's when she went to I would guess you call the projects, low income housing.
And that's still in Oklahoma?
Yes, this was
Okay. Okay. And did you move around Oklahoma or did you move from like state to state when you were younger?
pretty much stayed in Oklahoma.
Okay. Now you lived with your mom and that's when she met her husband.
Yes.
And he was in the military too?
No, he wasn't.
Okay.
He was in a prior relationship, but he got a divorce, and then because he was an alcoholic, an abusive alcoholic, there was a restraining order against him.
Oh, so he was abusive to his first wife.
Yes.
Was he abusive towards you or your mom?
When he was drunk, yes.
Like physically or verbally?
More verbally.
And he was abusive to you as well when he would get drunk.
Yes. It was like
That's
the
a lot. That's a
dark.
lot to handle as a young kid between your uncle and your stepdad.
Yeah. So,
How long did they stay married?
they stayed married until he passed away. But later on in his life, he ended up getting sober. When
All
by the
right.
time he became a grandfather, he was sober.
When did you discover alcohol?
When I joined the military,
Okay, so you weren't a drinker in high school or anything.
no, I was a really good kid. I went to school, did my schoolwork, I did sports, um, did all type of after school activities. So I really didn't experience any of that.
What kind of sports were you into?
I did basketball, softball, track,
Oh, so you were an athlete like all year round.
pretty much. Much. Well, I try to stay away from the house because my stepmom was kind of verbally abusive, and she'll go through mood swings. At that time, we didn't know that she was bipolar, and she ended up getting diagnosed when I was about 15, 16 years old. Oh, so she ended up getting diagnosed as bipolar.
Yeah, bipolar is a hard thing to deal with. My wife and I are both bipolar,
Well,
and
yeah,
my first fiance was bipolar schizophrenic. So I've been around a lot of bipolar in my life, and I know I always say bipolar is a spectrum, and there's a lot of places people can fall on it, especially if how old are you?
I'm 53 now.
Okay, so back 30 years ago, back 10 years ago, bipolar was really untreatable,
Yeah,
and doctors didn't know how to treat bipolar back then,
no,
let alone how to medicate for it.
no. Well, it really got out of control. I went to school one time, and when I was at school, she had some type of episode, completely destroyed the house. So I came back home, everything was destroyed. So they came, took her, she went to the hospital, and that's when they diagnosed her and started treating her.
Did it change things for her?
Probably within a year, it did.
Okay. And you said she was a drinker too?
When she was younger, when by the time she met my dad, she was clean.
Oh, okay. All right. And so and they stayed together until your dad passed away, you said?
Yes,
Okay, and she remained clean the whole time?
yes, she did.
That's good.
She went on and she started working in the hospital, and then she became a chaplain, a volunteer chaplain, to work with families who lost an infant, because she was never able to have children herself. So she always wanted to have children. So she would do that. She would go volunteer 8 hours a day, 5 days a week.
That's a full-time job.
It was. She did the volunteer work full time. Didn't miss a day.
I guess that's a good place to be if you feel like you need to take care of a child.
It gave her a purpose.
Yeah, that's what I mean. And so, what military branch did you join?
I joined the Marine Corps.
Oh, so you went really hard for it.
Well, I had an uncle who was in the Marines. So I always looked up to him because I thought, oh, how cool is he? Because he went to different countries. He was always traveling. So he was like the cool uncle. And the funny thing is nobody in my family knew I was going to join the Marine, but my cousin, everybody knew he wanted to join. So we went up to MEPS together. My uncle's the one who took us. And we went up to MEP. So when I went, everybody was like surprised. They're like, I didn't know she was going to join because I didn't tell nobody.
Like you said, you were self-diagnosed as a tomboy.
Yes. So I didn't tell anybody. I would just like, at that time I was 18. My parents pretty much, because when I was growing up, they're very strict. This is what you do. This is how you do it. You don't say nothing. You're to be seen, not to be heard. That type of background.
Yeah.
So 18, I'm like, okay, I'm an adult. And they were like, well, you're going to go to the you're going to go to school, and you're going to live near the house, and you're going to go home. And in my mind, I'm like, I'm adult. I want to go live life and live it on my terms. I graduated from high school, so I'm grown. That's my thought process. Little did I know.
How long were you in the Marines for?
I ended up staying 2 years active, and then I did 4 years reserves. So I met my husband in the military. And when I joined the military, I ended up going to my MOS was Aviation Operations Specialist. So that's a fancy word for doing flight logbooks. That's pretty much what you would have done in the military. And at first, I was studying and everything, and I decided to go to the NCO club on the base. It was just down the street. So I would go to the NCO club and I would take a drink, and I'm like, okay, this is cool. So I have another drink, and I'm like, well, this is even better. And then I have another drink, and I'm like, okay, I can rule the world right now.
Were you allowed to drink on the base when you were 18?
Yes. So it was like an immediate thing where I'm like, okay, I'm drinking, I'm cool, I'm going out on the dance floor, getting a lot of attention from the guys. So I just thought I was the greatest thing there is, and the more I drank, the better I thought I was.
The bee's knees.
So yeah, at first it just started out doing that on the weekend, and then it got to the point where I was going out every single night. And when you're going out every single night, you're not studying like you're supposed to. So I wasn't failing my tests, but I wasn't doing the greatest.
Yeah.
So I end up failing one test. The first test I failed, and with the school, if you fail a test, you have to go up on a review. And I went up on the review, and I couldn't say, "Oh, I'm failing the test because I'm out drinking every single night." So I lied.
So you went from drinking on the weekends to drinking every night.
Yes.
And that was by the time you were 20?
Oh, I was still like, no, I was 19.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it progressed really fast.
Oh, yeah. The first time I took a drink, I was like, okay, this is it.
You have arrived.
I have arrived to the world. So, hello, world. Here I am.
What was your drink of choice back then?
Whatever the guys would buy me. So, I know that's not the most appropriate thing to say, but
It's the truth.
it was the truth. And what I've realized is the more and more I would drink, the more and more it would take me to feel intoxicated. So
You were building your tolerance.
I was. And then I got to the point where I would just didn't care how much I would drink. So my built-in device, I know this was kind of wrong. So during the week I would drink I would say moderation. It really wasn't moderation, but in my mind, that's what I justify is moderation, where I can walk to my room and go to bed and go to sleep, and I know I went to my bed. The weekends there was no control. So if I, you know, I would know how I got back to the room. So my built-in device, and I know this is sound kind of horrible in a way, is that I would go out with my gay friends because I felt like if I'm with my gay friends, I would go back to the hotel. They make certain I was back in my room without something happening to me.
You were being, yeah, you were looked after. Now, gay women or gay men?
Most of the time, gay men, sometimes gay women. I had friends in both, and which is in that time in the military, you really couldn't come out and say you're gay.
Yeah, this is 30 years ago. So this is the early 90s.
So you really couldn't say, I'm going to the gay clubs, or you really couldn't be spotted in the gay clubs. But, my sense of mine at that time, I'm like, well, if I go out with my gay friends to the gay club and I can drink all I want to, and I know I come back home, back to my barracks room. Where I felt like if I went to a regular club, I might put myself in the situation where I don't know where I ended up at.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was like I'm trying to be responsible, but really I wasn't responsible.
Now, and you met your husband at the bar?
We were both in the military, so we were both going out at the same time, around the same people, and we would throw parties. So parties would be like on the weekend, you have a 48 hours, 72 hours off. And during those times, you just throw a massive party, get a room, everybody bring alcohol, everybody drinks, and it just go from, Friday all the way through Monday, nonstop drinking. So we would throw those type of parties. I mean, you didn't even know like a quarter of the people that would show up.
Yeah. And how you met your husband in the military? Were you working in the same jobs or?
We went to the same military school and back to the military school. So because they found out that I lied about the reasoning, I ended up getting kicked out of the school. So
You lied about what?
well, when I went in front of the board to find out why I failed the test, I didn't want to say, well, I've been out at the club every single night drinking. So I made up some excuse, and they found out that the excuse was a lie. So they ended up kicking me out of the school.
Okay.
And this was about 2 weeks before graduation.
And that's how you met your husband, was in like a class?
So they sent me over to Mulder Transportation School, which that's where he went to school. Which that's probably wasn't a very good idea either because I didn't have a license and I never drove before. That's the military for you.
Did you learn how to drive in the military then?
I learned how to drive on a 5-ton.
That's one way to learn.
It is.
And did your husband stay in the military when you left?
He did. He ended up retiring after 20 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Was he ever deployed?
He was deployed a lot. He's been to quite a few deployments.
Was that hard on you with him gone for long?
You get used to it. I mean, we met in the military, so I already knew what life was like in the military.
Is that when your drinking would escalate when you were alone?
At first, it just drank to have fun. I was going out and all, but when I had my son, it became where I was alone. So we drank together too. So he drank a lot himself. So it's not like I drank and he didn't drink. But when he was deployed, I used to go out with the other spouses and we would drink or we would have like little get togethers and drink. So it was also social.
How old were you when you had your son?
I was 21.
Okay, so you were like fresh out of the military.
Yes. Well, when I found out I was pregnant, I had to make a decision about if I'm going to stay in or not. And I didn't have any family care plan. With us both being in the military, we need to have a family care plan. And we both tried to talk to our parents, and his mom was kind of iffy. She wasn't the most reliable person in the world. And then my mom said, well, if you do that, then once you go to get deployed, I'm just going to keep him. So I'm like, well, I don't want either one. So I ended up getting out and then went from active duty to reserves.
And you were able to stay sober for those 9 months?
Yes, I actually did.
Is that hard at all or no? Pretty easy.
Um, at
You go,
first,
they
hard.
go from the bar scene, all the time for the last few years, and now all of a sudden you stopped. How did that change?
It was tough. It was tough, but I was also excited to be a mom. So
Do you just have the one kid?
no, I have three. I have
Okay. And how old were you when the others were born?
the other one came along a year later. So with both of them, as soon as I had them, I would go back to drinking. And after I had them, I'm like, okay, I'm going to bottle feed them. I didn't want to breastfeed because I already knew I was going to drink.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And were you when you say you knew you were going to drink, do you mean you were going back out to the bars?
No, I was drinking at home by that time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're raising three kids, sometimes by yourself when your husband would be deployed, and that's when you started drinking alone.
Yes.
Was that like wine or beer or liquor?
Well, we also had parties. So, football events, we would drink, social events, we would drink. If there was nothing going on, we would drink. So it was,
Always always finding a reason.
there's always an excuse or a reason to drink.
Yep. I always say if you had a good day, you would drink. If you had a bad day, you would drink. If you're bored, you would drink. You're always going to find a way to drink.
But I always thought, well, I'm fine. If I go to work, do my work, come home, get dinner done, clean the house, then I'm not an alcoholic. That was the way my mind set. But it got to the point where, okay, it's 3 o'clock. I got 2 more hours to go. And then I started thinking about, okay, I'm going to stop at the store or I'm going to um, go get some alcohol. What am I going to drink? I'm going to make that stop, come home. So at 3 o'clock, I was already thinking about it.
So you were mostly a nighttime drinker.
Yes. Because in my mind, if you go to work, take care of the house, you're not an alcoholic.
Did it ever escalate to all day?
No, maybe on the weekends. On the weekends, it would.
Okay. And so your kids are pretty grown by now.
Yes. So the husband retires from the military, and now he's home. Now, it reminds you, our entire time we was married, he was always deployed. So we met when he was deploying. We got married when he was deploying. So the only thing we knew in our relationship is the military. So when he retired, things took like a weird turn. So now he's home all the time. He's concerned about what I'm doing. And it just becomes, so much. And then he has his own problems he have to deal with because he's drinking too. He's dealing with the effects of being deployed multiple times. So PTSD he's suffering from. Um, a whole bunch of other things going on with him.
Yeah, I can't imagine 20 years of being deployed over and over again, that can be a lot to handle mentally.
Yes.
Were you drinking with them?
Yeah, we would drink together. I would drink more than he did because when he wasn't drinking with me, I was still drinking. I would drink when I was making dinner. So,
Starting the night off.
yes. Well, we ended up going to the Italy. Was stationed in Italy for 4 years. So when I was in Italy, I found a new love for wine. So that
I was
was
just gonna say wine. As soon as you said Italy, wine popped in my head.
yes. So with Italians are very social. They're like everything's hand movement, everything is out
Yeah.
big, everything is. So I was learning Italian at that time, and I realized, well, the more I drank, the better my Italian got too. So okay, well, I'm going to go out, I'm going to drink. You're able to, and it's not because of the alcohol made you the Italian better, is because you're no longer worried about what you're saying or trying to think too much into it. You just spoke.
How was it? So, because you said you were drinking while making dinner. If I'm not mistaken, Italians in Italy eat a lot later at night.
Yes. So any of the good restaurants that you want to go to in Italy was after.
Eight. Yeah, I
and,
was gonna say 7, 8 o'clock, right? Yeah.
and there was this winery that was down the street from our house. So, sorry. So what we would do is we used to buy these containers about this big. This was all the Americans in the same building. So that we lived in this building, and there's 4 families that lived in the same building, and we're all Americans. So what we would do is, we'll get our walking shoes on, get our containers, and we'll walk down to the winery. And it looked like a gas pump. What it looks like. So you would fill it up your wine in these jugs. So first we started out with like these type of things, and then we started getting those big old gallon jugs,
Yeah.
like the big huge 2-gallon jugs that we would take up to this winery and use the little pump and get the wine because the wine was cheaper than even water.
Yeah, that's how it is in Italy. That's like I said, as soon as you said Italy, I'm like, well, that's wine country.
Yes. Yeah.
And when you came back, were you drinking more wine then?
Oh, yes. Yes, I was. And, it the husband started noticing that I would drink a lot of wine, and he would make a comment. So when I went to the store, I used to buy a bottle of wine that I would put in the fridge, and then I have a bottle of wine that I would hide because I didn't want him to know, okay, I drank this entire bottle by myself. So I would hide the one bottle, and the where I would hide it at is the cleaning supply cabinet because nobody would ever go into the cleaning supply cabinet. So I was fine. I was good with that. I would hide in the cleaning supply cabinet. So I have one bottle I'll hide, one bottle I'll put in the fridge. So that was the bottle. I'm like, hey, you want a glass of wine? So he would drink a glass of wine, and in between, I would go in the hidden bottle, and I would drink that as well. So it looks like I wasn't drinking as much as I really was.
Yeah, that's a lot to handle, Crystal. And what prompted you to get sober? Was there like you were just tired of drinking?
Well, I decided to go to college and go on and get an accounting degree. And sorry about that. And I was working a full-time job at the date in the morning time with the state. I was working for the state. So I would come home, I would cook, I would clean, I would take care of the house. And, at that time, the husband really wasn't doing anything. He would go to work and that was it. And it just came a lot. And I used to stay up at nighttime trying to get homework done. And being in the military, he had all this medication that would be sent to him. And one of the medication that he had tons of it is prescription sleeping pills. So one day he's like, hey, I see you're up studying all the time. Here, take one of my sleeping pills. Of course, I didn't tell him I already had like an entire bottle of wine that I drank that was hidden on top of the wine that he knew I was drinking. So I had one of those. Now,
What kind of sleeping pill was it? I have chronic insomnia, so I've been on 4 different sleeping pills. I've been on Trazodone, I've been on Ambien, I've been on Seroquel, and now I'm on olanzapine.
well, the one that he had months of supply of is the Ambien.
That didn't do anything for me. I couldn't sleep with it.
Well, with all the wine that I took and the Ambien, it intensified the effect of the wine.
Yeah.
So now I'm like, oh, this is even better. So now, and the thing is that he had months and months of supply of it because he wouldn't take it because his mind wasn't diseased. He didn't say, well, I feel, if he got it, if I feel a certain way, it makes me sick, whatever, I'm not going to take it. In my mind, I'm like, oh, this feels good, so I'm going to take it, and I'm going to take another one of them because I like the effect of the one with the wine so much that I'm going to have a second one. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, well, I can even increase the effect of the wine. So now, he's mentioning, me drinking so much. I'm like, okay, well, I still have my hidden bottle that I drink every night. The other bottle that he knew about, if I mix the Ambien, then that bottle will stay in the fridge longer. So it looks like I'm not drinking as much.
Yeah.
But really, I still am. And now I'm just mixing it with Ambien.
And by the time you got sober, did you stop taking the Ambien too?
Well, what happened is interesting how it happened. I was working on a softball forum. So I was doing that because my daughter played college softball and I had a softball background. So it was something for me to do in between drinking and working. And I was working on a project. And with the project, I was reaching out to different people and it was come together. And one of the people that I reached out to was a guy named Rich Hoppy. I don't know if you're familiar with the King and His Court, but he played for the King and His Court. And I was working with people that he knew. And I was completely intoxicated when I reached out to him, left a message. So, of course, I've done it so many times where I made a fool of myself, where you apologize, I'm sorry, I drank too much, blah, blah, blah. So I had to backtrack and apologize for the way I act, which, like I said, I've been drinking for good, since I was 18 years old. So I'm used to saying, okay, I drank too much. And he was recovering addict. So he had me reach out. He gave me the link to check out his book, kind of tell about his story, going through AA, recovery, everything like that. And I'm like, well, it made me it dawned on me, well, maybe that's what I need to do. Maybe that's what I need to do to get sober because I've done it. I've tried before. I mean, when I was pregnant, I was sober and I would be sober good 2 or 3 months, but I would always go back. So I'm like, well, let me try something different. So he got a hold of this lady who was, ended up sponsoring me. Her name's Caroline. So she was my emergency sponsor. So she was sponsoring me. I was told, go find a program. I was told, this is how you do it. So I started going out first. This was during the pandemic. So about 2021. I was going to meetings online. I went to a program called Celebrate Recovery.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the first couple of days where I was getting sober. I worked for the state, and the irony of where I worked at is on one side of the building I worked at was a brewery. So they would make beers. There's that. On the other side of the building I work at was the police station. So, so I used to say the irony of being in between both locations. And I used to deal with medical paperwork. So I worked for the state, and the program I worked for is the medication part for HIV clients. So it was to get medication out for these clients that need it. So that was the program I worked for. And I remember I'm locked in this room because there's a lot of records there. So when I go into the room, I lock myself in. So I'm locked in this room and I'm stuck in between either making this choice or this choice. And I used to think about, this police station over here. This is, I'm saying I don't want to get pulled over either, or go to the winery. And I went through like withdrawals while I was working.
Which is never easy from alcohol.
No.
And it's dangerous. It's dangerous to withdraw from alcohol. Did you stick with Celebrate Recovery or did you stick with AA?
My sponsor, my permanent sponsor in Celebrate Recovery. So it worked out really well because after I do go to the Celebrate Recovery, then I would meet with my sponsor. And my husband at the time, he's still dealing with getting out of the military. So he was really controlling. So, trying to go and do stuff wasn't always the easiest thing. And then his PTSD got really out of control. So he started imagining I was going out having affairs, that I was doing all types of things, which wasn't happening. So going to Celebrate Recovery, going to my sponsor all at one spot, it was convenient for me.
Yeah. Do you still go to meetings today?
I do. And I still, I go online, do groups online. If anybody needs a sponsor, I'm there to help them. If someone needs someone to talk to, I'm here.
Yeah, I do Zoom meetings too. They're really helpful.
Yeah.
I have my Gamblers Anonymous right after this. And I do that every weekend on Saturday and Sunday based out of Las Vegas. And then I do NA every day at noon, Monday to Friday, based out of Providence. And, both meetings are helpful for me, and I do them 7 days a week. And, I'm not stopping anytime soon because they're helping me every single day. I learn something new.
Well, if you follow the steps, you can apply it to
everything. Yep.
Yeah, not just one thing. And sometimes you may have to go back to a specific step and do it over and over again.
Yeah, you catch a resentment against somebody, you have to do a step 4 real quick and do a step 5 and talk to your sponsor about it.
So with a husband, we end up getting a divorce. So when I was going through recovery, I don't know if it really bothered him or I don't know what happened, but he would used to call me in meetings, cuss at me, accuse me of all types of stuff. And I tell him, I said, well, come by because we was going to the church. That's where I had the Celebrate Recovery at. I said, well, you drive by it when you come home from work, so come to the church and come do the program with me. You can come and do it. No, I don't want to. I don't want to do it. And I'm like, well, still come by. That way you see what I'm doing, so I'm not out having an affair or whatever your mind was thinking. But he wouldn't do it. And, I'm just like, well, if you don't want to do the program with me, you have to figure out how to get help for yourself. And he wouldn't do it. So I'm like, well, you know what? I can't make someone get help if they don't want to get help.
Yep.
I can't save him if you don't want to be saved.
How long ago did you get divorced?
Well, I moved out. I moved in with my daughter for a little bit. Then he moved to Florida, which I'm in Alabama now. And he's like, well, I'm changed. Come back and I'll show you that I'm different. All the stuff. So I'm like, well, okay, maybe he has changed. Even though I've heard this story before, you always want to have hope. So I moved back in and things wasn't going as planned. I found out he was seeing somebody else. And I found out because I found out he was lying about where he was going. Then I saw the bank account. I saw he was giving this girl money. Then he was going out to restaurants. And, I'm like, well, this ain't good for my sobriety.
It's good that you put your sobriety first.
Yes.
And your mental health first.
So I got out and we got divorced. He kept everything and I kept my sanity.
And this is how long ago?
Well, the divorce been finalized about a year.
Oh, okay. And you're with your daughter in Alabama?
Well, my daughter lives about 2 hours away. And I try to get a place nearby, but because it's a military town, it's hard to find something around the time I was moving, which is during the summertime, because everybody is deploying and moving and relocating. So it's really hard to find a place.
So your daughter's in the military too?
She lives near a military town because she
Oh,
works at a post.
okay.
Yeah. So I'm about 2 hours from her.
Well, you've been through a lot, Crystal. I'm glad to see you still sober, and it's hard to go through a divorce, especially in recovery. And to put your recovery first, that's a big deal.
Yeah. Well,
and I appreciate you coming on and being so honest about your story. Especially, it's hard to relive the pain of what your uncle did to you as a child.
Yeah.
Were you ever drinking to numb that memory?
I don't know, but I think it contributed to it.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. Well, again, I appreciate you coming on, Crystal, and I'm glad that you are 3 years clean and sober now, and you've been through a lot, especially in sobriety, moving around all the time, and now now you can be in one place and start over again. That's amazing.
Yeah, and the thing is you keep going to the meetings whether you think you don't need it or not, because that's where you find yourself getting in trouble when you say, oh, I don't need it no more.
Yeah.
That's where you find yourself in trouble.
Yep.
Myself in that type of situation where I possibly would think about drinking. And then the other part of it is having a connection with God. I know in AA they mention your higher power, but if you really can't, you have to have some type of faith in something bigger than you. And if you don't, then you're relying on your own self, your own experience. And that's where fellowship is important, because everybody has a story. Everybody been where you have. So your story is not unique. It might be your story, but there's somebody who's experienced some of the same things that you went through. And being able to be around people that understands it, it helps you realize, okay, this is not something I have to, hide or be ashamed, because that's what you do when you drink and you make decisions that you may normally not make, that you have to lie about it. You have to lie to yourself. You have to lie to other people. You have to hide things. So you're not being truly authentic to who you were meant to be. You become somebody else.
Yeah.
For who you were meant to be.
Yep. Well, have a great weekend, Crystal.
Thank you, and thank you so much for having me on the show. It's been a pleasure.